Hey everyone, welcome to the QT2's 2025 Ironman 70.3 Texas course preview and race tips. My name is Bob Richter. I'm a coach with QT2 Systems. Just a bit about me before we jump into the content here. We have a lot to cover. I've been a QT2 coached athlete since 2018, and I've been a coach since 2022. I've done this event 4 times. It's a great event. You're going to love it if you've not done it before. I'm a 18-time Ironman 70.3 finisher, and I've qualified for the World Championships. And I've done 6 full distance Ironman events over about a 12-year stretch or so, something like that. So the overview, what we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about QT2 Systems 5 Cornerstones of training, the final weeks of preparation for the event, what that could look like for you. We're going to do pre-race and check-in logistics for this event, what the day prior to the race and race morning, things to consider there. And what we'll spend most of our time is the course preview in a bit of detail, and then touch on the race day pacing and fueling, things to consider. So first of all, the QT2 Systems five cornerstones of training are the training component, pacing, restoration and day-to-day nutrition, fueling, and mental fitness. So we'll touch on these topics as we go through the discussion for this race. So the final weeks, touching on the training and pacing cornerstones, you'll be tapering likely 2 to 3 weeks, depending on your experience in fitness. And during that time, you'll be likely doing, any key race specific sessions, working on race pace efforts at a shorter distance, shorter duration, of course, or you'll just really be taking it quite easy. During this time, it's a good idea to try to simulate race conditions and intensities during the training. For this event, of course, it's an ocean swim. Technically, it is an ocean swim, but it is a protected area. So it does feel a bit more like a big lake swim. You should also consider, steady riding in the arrow position, and we'll talk about the reasons for that here in a few minutes. And then running in sun and heat, because this time of the year in early April down in Galveston, it can be warm and humid. Be prepared for any weather conditions. Springtime in Texas can be schizophrenic with weather. We can have heat and humidity, can be windy, it can be cold, rain. They're all possibilities in Texas in early April timeframe. And wind is a good bet. So just mentally prepare yourself for the likelihood of riding in the wind. And it's also a good time to do a dress rehearsal to ride and run in the gear you plan to wear on race day, so you know exactly how everything is going to feel for you. So the final weeks for training and pacing is you want to train ideally at your race targets. If you are a QT2 athlete, then you are likely training based upon heart rate targets or RPE or specific pace, likely on the run, or power. If you run with power, bike with power, you likely have targets there. So you do some training based upon your specific targets that you've agreed to with your coach. And then in the final weeks, the 1 to 2 weeks out, remember there are no fitness gains during this time. You just really want to focus on frequency and feel. Don't get caught in the trap of overtraining or panic training. You want to err on the side of recovery, if anything. And as you approach the last couple of weeks, it's more important to be rested than to be sharp. So, again, don't overtrain, and then include days off during that time as well. That's also very important, so you're as rested as you can be on race day. Final weeks, as you look at the nutrition and restoration component, you want to be taking in roughly half your body weight in ounces of fluids in addition to what you lose during workouts. You want to focus on nutrient density meals, aim for 4 daily servings each of fruits and vegetables every day. That's very important. Have a replenishment meal the day prior to a long run. That's high in carbs and low in fat. Continue to make sleep a priority as much as you possibly can, 7.5 to 8 hours a night. I know that's not easy for many people, me included, but try to do that as best you can. It's also a good idea to take your anti-inflammatory measures, omega-3s, hydration, reducing stress to the extent possible, and sleep and rest are all steps that can help in that effort. It's also a good idea to taper down caffeine during this time, target less than 800 milligrams per week. And don't forget to take your recovery drinks after your workouts. Make sure you're topped off. Then continuing race week nutrition and restoration during race week itself. You really, for the most part, eat a relatively normal diet during the week. If it is a warm week and if it's anticipated to be a warm day for the race, you want to consider adding extra salt to your meals as well from a hydration standpoint. Hydration is a really big focus during this time. You want to make sure you're drinking plenty of fluids, sports drink or water, ideally, particularly for the 3 days leading up to the race, in addition to what you lose from workouts. And you want to continue to taper down your caffeine intake during that time, with none on the day prior to the race if possible. And doing that increases your body's receptivity to it on race day, and you'll feel it more, and your body will react to it differently. You get a little bit better boost. And then you want to focus on a carb load dinner 2 nights prior to the race, which would be Friday night in this case, and a good carb focused breakfast, pancakes and things the day prior, which would be Saturday morning. Continue to make sleep a priority, 8 hours a night or more if you can, and stay off your feet as much as possible during race week, and just make sure you're rested. That's the key thing here. Final weeks from a fueling perspective, it's important to fuel in accordance to your plan every single session. Fuel with the products that you plan to use on race day. The purpose is to train your gut for race day, and there's no surprises there. Also, use a recovery drink regularly, like Clean Recovery. And remember, on race day fueling, it may be the single most important limiter of your performance, and it's one that you have control over. So having a fueling plan and sticking to your fueling plan on race day is going to be critical to your success. So make sure you practice during training. Then from a mental fitness perspective, in the last few weeks leading up to the race, reduce external pressures as much as you can, and focus on what you can control, which is your attitude and your fueling. You've worked really hard to get to this point, so trust your preparation, trust your training, and how your coach has guided you along to get to this point. And then begin visualizing what a great performance looks like for you. If it's based on feel, based on time, whatever, just what does it look like for you, and begin thinking about that. But equally as important is focusing on how you will respond when something doesn't go according to plan. If you run into any kind of an issue, a bike issue, a flat on the bike or something like that, how you respond to it makes a huge difference. So give some thought to that. And then it's a good idea to list your goals and your targets for the race. Goals are things that you have 100% control over, like your attitude and feeling and how you respond to adversity. And then targets are numbers based, just pace and power targets, for example, how you want to race. And enjoy the feeling of extraordinary fitness, and be grateful for getting to this point, because you've obviously worked very, very hard to get here. So pre-race logistics, you want to review the athlete guide as soon as it's posted, and the race details. Review that very carefully. We're going to go through many things here, but you want to double check with a final athlete guide. You want to look at your bike, make sure it's running properly and everything is tuned up, and get it tuned up if it needs to, but make sure you do that well in advance. Make your list, your packing lists and things like that. Purchase any needed items. Make sure you've got the right goggles, ideally tinted goggles for this race. I'll talk about that here shortly. And a backup pair is always a good idea. Make sure your devices are charged, have fresh batteries, that kind of thing. And it's also good to get your packing done a bit early. Think about swim, bike, and run, and start organizing the things you're going to need for each aspect of the race. Double check and confirm your reservations is a good idea. Flights, hotels, rental cars, whatever it is. And then also, when you get the athlete guide or at the race website, plan your time around athlete check-in, pre-race briefings when those are held, and then bike gear check-in, which is on Saturday, and I'll get into those details here in just a minute. All right, so race check-in logistics. For this event, Expo and Athlete Check-in is in Ironman Village. That's in the Moody Gardens parking lot. It's really easy to find. It's in the back of the facility, back of the Moody Gardens hotel area. It's really easy to find. Athlete check-in is Friday the 4th. It's from 2 to 7, and then Saturday from 9 to 4. And when you're there, make sure you have your active.com registration and your QR code with your photo ID. They'll always ask for that. And then, get to Expo early, limit your time there, do your shopping, buy your things that you want to get, maybe get there and to coincide with one of the athlete briefings so you don't have to make a second trip. And then note that Saturday from 10 to 5 is the mandatory bike check-in and timing chip pickup. So you got to get your bike in there during that time. And then athlete briefings, they're also at Ironman Village in the hotel parking lot, same areas where the bike check-in and stuff is. And the athlete briefings are Friday at 3 and 5. And then there's 3 on Saturday, 1 at 11. There's a 1 o'clock session that's in Spanish, and then another session at 2 p.m. Saturday afternoon. So you have to make sure you attend one of those athlete briefings. And then once you get your race packet, you'll get in that will be a race bib that you'll wear on the run. There'll be stickers for your bike frame and bike stem, and also for your helmet. You'll get your swim cap. You'll have your bike checkout ticket for someone else to check out your bike if you are not able to do that or don't want to do that. And then you'll get your athlete wristband that you'll have to wear throughout the course of the weekend. The day before the race, some final checks, things to think about. It's a good idea just to get out and do a short shakeout run, short spin on the bike, make sure the bike is running smoothly for you. Do this on Friday or Saturday, and then ideally a real easy swim, short practice swim. Note that there's no formal practice swim though on the course. The harbor, the bay area there where the swim is closed. They don't allow any swimming in there. But there is a Lasker community pool, has been open in prior years for Ironman athletes for a drop-in fee. I put the phone number on there. Check the athlete guide, make sure that's still available. It has been in prior years, so that's a good option for you. When you drop off your bike and your gear, know your transition location. Really pay attention to where the bike out spot is in relation to your rack spot, and where the bike or the run out location is, so you kind of have your bearings a little bit once you get in there. Again, just a reminder, charge your electronics, your watch and power meter and all those things. Maybe replace the battery in your heart rate monitor. I always do that prior to a race. And then also good idea to, in your hotel room or Verbo, wherever you're staying, set out and organize your gear for the race morning. So you don't have to, you're not scrambling around race morning real early trying to find your things. So have your tri-kit and your swim cap, wetsuit, all those things set out and easily located in the morning when you get up. Have your pre-race clothing ready, post-race clothing ready, and then your morning nutrition, your breakfast, and all those things set out and ready to go. And then just one thing, check the athlete guide to see if there'll be a morning clothes bag provided that you would be able to put your clothes in and drop it off on the way to the swim. They have done that in the past, but I don't think they had it in 2024. So just double check and see if they're doing that or not. And then just a reminder again, Saturday 10 to 5 is a mandatory bike check-in and timing chip pickup. So make sure you plan for that. So race morning nutrition. For breakfast, you really want to have simple carbohydrates, fluids, electrolytes, a small amount of protein ideally. Stay away from fat or fiber or extra vitamins and minerals that won't have any fueling impact for you on race day that could potentially lead to a GI issue. Just save any vitamins and minerals for after the race. The core diet recommended breakfast for pre-race breakfast is applesauce, banana, a scoop of whey protein, and a sports drink. And you want to ideally complete eating that meal 3 hours prior to the race. I tend to go about 2.5 hours or so. Everyone's a little bit different, but just give yourself plenty of time to let that settle in. And then sip on sports drink, ideally right up until the point of the race start, so you're well hydrated. And then have a gel 15 to 20 minutes before the race start as well. For logistics on race morning parking, if you're not staying at the Moody Gardens Hotel, there is plenty of parking there, but as typical, can get a bit congested and a little slow getting into the facility. So just make sure you give yourself plenty of time. If you are staying at the Moody Gardens Hotel, it's a very easy walk to the back of the property where transition is. Transition does open at 5 a.m., is open till 7. And again, just review the layout, make sure you know where the bike out, the run out is, and everything in relation to your specific rack spot. Make sure you give yourself time to apply sunscreen if it looks like a sunny day, and add fuel to your bike, have your run belt ready to go. Set up your transition area right under your bike spot area there, and be mindful of the athletes that are around you. Make sure there's plenty of space for everyone. Don't spread out too much. And then allow plenty of time to get to the swim start. It'll probably be a little bit dark by the time you start walking over there, but it's an easy walk. I don't like to walk around barefoot, so I do suggest if you're similar, have a pair of old flip-flops or old running shoes or something you can just dispose of, and have something on your feet while you're doing the walk to the swim start. So just a general course overview here before we jump into the details on each part of it. The swim start is at Moody Gardens Palm Beach. Like I said, it's a very easy walk from T1 and 2. And then, consider having throwaway footwear to wear from transition, down the beach area. Or you're not actually walking on the beach, you're walking on a pathway until you get down to the start of the swim. It is a rolling start, and it's self-seated based on your estimated finish time. And you enter the water by jumping off a dock. So there's a bit of a jump into the water, maybe 3-4 feet or so, which is kind of fun. So just expect that. It's a big one loop swim. And then you exit near the what they call a historic paddle wheel boat. It's a real big boat. It's a nice thing to sight on. So you exit on opposite side of that. I've got some pictures of that here in a second. The bike, it's mostly flat and almost always windy. The road conditions tend to be real good. So if conditions are good, it can be actually a very fast bike. Not a lot of spectators out there. It's an out and back bike course. It's not a loop, but it's a good bike. It's a good, fair bike course. The run is 3 loops. It's very flat and there's a lot of turns. There's one short stretch during the run loop that has some gravel, rock kind of surface. Nothing to worry about. Just wanted to mention it so you can expect that. And there's not a lot of shade there, and it can be very warm and humid. So just be ready for the sun and the heat if it looks like a warm day down in Galveston, which it can be in early April. All right, so specific to the swim, it is a 7 a.m. race start. As I mentioned, you'll self-seed in swim corrals. It's really not corrals. There'll be volunteers holding signs with estimated finish time. So you'll just line up around that area where that volunteer happens to be. So you'll be swimming with people that are expected to swim at about the same pace as you. So be realistic about your swim finish. Water temperature will be announced on race morning. It'll likely be a wetsuit swim. Every time I've done the race, it has been, but be ready for anything. Wetsuits are permitted up to and including 76.1 degrees. No changes there with the water temperatures. You'll see here, if you see my cursor here, this is the dock area right here that you jump off of, and the course goes straight out. This is kind of to the east, so you could have the sun in your eyes a little bit until you make 2 left-hand turns, and then you're heading back to the westerly direction. And this long stretch in the back here, what I want to mention here is this is where you can possibly have a bit of a current over your right shoulder to your left, and it can kind of have you drifting in just a little bit towards shore. So it's not a strong push. It's just something I wanted to mention to keep that in mind, and make sure you're sighting frequently, because it can be easy to sort of drift a little bit to the left just from a kind of a casual, gentle current that happens to flow that way at times. So just pay attention to that and make sure you're sighting very, very frequently so you stay on course. And this course, buoys will be on your left. So you have yellow buoys in the first half, orange buoys in the second half, and the turn buoys are red. It is an ocean swim, as I mentioned, but it's in a harbor, very protected there. So it feels more like a lake swim. There can be some waves and a little bit of chop, but you don't get the big ocean swells like at IRONMAN Florida, for example. And then that you can sometimes get that slight current that has you drifting from your right to left a little bit on that long back stretch. So just something to be aware of. The Galveston, the water down there is a bit dark and kind of murky. It's not really clear and beautiful as it is in Florida, but you do get nice buoyancy from the salt water, so take advantage. Temperature is usually very comfortable and wetsuit legal most years, and every year that I've done the race. Here's a photo of that paddle wheel boat that I told you about, and here's the last red turn buoy. So you go around that turn buoy and the exit on the backside, and you can see the swim out section right over here. And here's a photo. You see the dock. There's like 3 of these docks, and usually they have athletes jumping off 2 of them, jump in, jump down to the water, and off you go. So it's kind of cool. Some more photos here. You can see this one down here in the middle is you line up along the pathway. It's a long lineup of people. You'll have volunteers where they'll be holding the signs down there for the swim times. Then the swim, you walk out on the pier area here, walk out onto the docks, and here's an image of a person jumping in the water. So you can see it's a bit of a jump, but that's kind of fun. And then the swim out is nice. Usually they have swimsuit strippers down here that help you get your wetsuits off. I'm sorry, I said swimsuits. Wetsuit strippers down here that help you get your wetsuits off. Usually they have those. It's a nice run down this direction in the grass area here until you get back to transition 1 in the parking lot area. So it's a good one. And there's usually a lot of spectators there, and that's when your family and friends can see you get out of the water. So that's a good spot for them to hang out and wait for you to finish up the swim. So swim pacing, as I said, it's a self-seated rolling start. So be realistic. First 200-300 meters or so, usually it's up tempo. You're amped up to get in the water. And then you should settle into a tempo and swim at a more comfortable pace. Kind of, looking at an RPE of 7 out of 10, roughly. If you're an anxious swimmer, start conservatively and build into it. Don't be in a hurry. And as usual, it's not unusual to get bumped or hit, so something you should expect. And stay wide right for less contact, and take the turn buoys a little wider to avoid other people. And if you can, use other swimmers to your benefit, draft and sight off them if possible. And as I mentioned, course buoys will be on your left. You have to keep the turn buoys on your left. You have to go round to the right, make sure they're on your left the whole time. And then you can increase the kick the last couple 100 yards. And a good landmark for that is once you get past that turn buoy around the paddle wheel boat that I mentioned, that's a good time to start that kick a little bit, so you're ready to preparing your legs to run a little bit once you get out of the water. Okay, the bike course overview, you can see it's a real flat course, very little gain, and it can be very fast. This section here is the section just getting yourself out of Moody Gardens, and then you have the long coastal freeway. You cross over the San Luis Bridge, and you do a turnaround and then head back, so you hit that bridge twice. So we'll get into some details on the bike course here in just a moment. There's 4 sections really that we're going to go over. The section where you leave Moody Gardens, the Texas Coastline Highway, the long stretch of freeway there, or not freeway, but highway. When you make the turnaround heading back to Galveston, and then the final stretch back to and into the Moody Gardens area. So first of all, the way out of town in Moody Gardens, there's a series of turns there. It can be a little bit crowded. And there's some speed humps as well, but the turns are well marked. There's plenty of space. The speed bumps they're kind of the wider ones, so they're not real sharp, but just be aware of those, pay attention, and take those carefully. Once you get through that point, you head southwest out of Galveston along the coastal freeway there. Road surfaces here are really good, and there's often a noticeable kind of a cross tailwind that can push you on the way out. So if that's the case, it's important to don't push too hard during that section, stay within your limits, focus on nutrition, hydration during that time. And if there is a tailwind rather, it's a good idea to ride that 5 to 10 watts under your goal power targets if that is a helping tailwind. And don't fall behind on fueling and hydration during the time. You want to be topped off by the time you get to that turnaround point. The freeway is very flat along the highway there, other than the bridge, the San Luis Pass. When you get to that bridge at about mile 22, it's about mile 33 on the way back into town. And then once you approach that bridge, that of course is a modest incline to get up and over the bridge. And then there's an expansion joint that I recall on each side. So when you approach the bridge, there's a bit of a bump there. Once you get over the bridge on the other side, there's a bump on the way down. And then when you do the turnaround and head back, you'll hit those two bumps again. So as you approach the start to that bridge, it's good to get out of aero, sit up, have a good grip on the bars, and when you hit that expansion joint, just be aware of it. Then there's the turnaround. You head back to Galveston Island, and if you had the benefit of a tailwind on the way out, you'll likely have a headwind on the way back, so be ready for that. It's a bit of a mental grind, it can be, and you want to stay as aero as possible to manage the wind. So make sure you're doing some training on your bike in aero. And if you are grinding into the wind on the way back, try to keep your power no more than 5 to 10 watts above your goal if you're dealing with that headwind. And some years the wind can be tough. It can be a battle. So just be ready for it. It's nothing to worry about, because if you have a headwind one way, you're going to have the benefit of a tailwind the other way, very likely. So you'll save energy. And then the return back to Moody Gardens off the freeway will have the same turns and stuff, just the opposite way that you had. And just remember those speed bumps and stay alert as you approach each of the turns, and watch out for other riders out there. And you'll be ready to get back into T2 and start the run. Here's just some quick photos of the bike course. You can see the road surface here, this bottom one. This is the coastal freeway. Got nice views of the ocean. It's kind of open there, so it can be breezy, but the surfaces are really good. Here's a photo of that San Luis Pass bridge that I mentioned. Again, surface there is excellent as well, but just watch out for that expansion joint that I mentioned, and just a brief incline as you approach and as you go to and from after the turnaround. Fueling on the bike for race day. 8 stations will be about every 14 or 15 miles. There'll be water and mortal hydration. You guys are probably aware IRONMAN is no longer using Gatorade product on the course. So that's something to be mindful of and be aware. They'll have Morton gels out there, caffeinated and non-caffeinated, usually bars and bananas as well. You should really consider carrying your own hydration on the bike, particularly if you're used to racing and training with Gatorade Endurance, which is no longer out there. As you approach 8 stations, of course, be careful, have heads up, watch out for other riders. And if you're not stopping, make sure you stay well to the left. And then make sure you check the athlete guide for final details on course nutrition. And if you take a look at that graph to the left here, mortal hydration versus Gatorade, there is a very significant different nutritional component here. Mortal has very few carbs versus Gatorade, significantly higher carbs, and also significantly more sodium. So mortal hydration really is just hydration. It's not really fuel as Gatorade Endurance is. So if you're used to the Gatorade Endurance, for training and racing, consider carrying your own. That's a really good idea, and that's what I would do. Also, the Morton gels, just note the black ones have no caffeine. White ones do have caffeine. They are a bit lower in sodium though versus most other gels. So you may need to consider a sodium supplement. And then the caffeinated versions are quite high in caffeine actually versus other ones. So hopefully you've practiced with those in training. And they do have kind of a hydrogel consistency, so a bit thicker consistency than other gels, which can be more liquidy. Actually like it quite a lot, but they are something to practice with prior to race day, so you know what to expect if you're not used to them. As far as equipment goes, a tri-bike is your best bet on this one. Prolonged flat stretches on the bike with that freeway, so you'll need to be riding an arrow as much as possible. But of course, take time to sit up and stretch and work your back out a little bit if you need to. The position breaks that's referred to, and then just your normal gearing and crank setup, however you train, should be just fine for this race. Your wheel choice really depends on the wind and your comfort and experience. And as I said, the wind down there, it can be formidable. So just be ready for it. Have your head wrapped around the possibility of having a good wind to deal with one way or the other, most likely on the way back in after you've made the turnaround. And then just, I think the important thing is to ride with what you're comfortable with and most experienced with in handling in windy conditions. Prioritize comfort. That's really key here. All right, for pacing on the bike, you'll likely have a U shape in your heart rate, which meaning when you come out of the water, you're in transition, you get settled on the bike, your heart rate will be a little bit amped up after you get out of the swim. After you get rolling on the freeway, your heart rate should settle down a bit and get into your target for the bike. And then if you push toward the end, your heart rate will jump up just a little bit. That's where you get the ideal U shape. And ideally in the second half of the bike, your heart rate will be just a few beats higher than it was on the way out. This is a good course to meter out pretty evenly from a power perspective. And you want to contain your power in the wind. If you're riding with a tailwind, keep your power in control and ideally ride 5 to 10 watts under your goal power. And if you're dealing with a headwind on the way back or on the way out, whichever it happens to be, try to keep your power within 5 to 10 watts and don't go over that. And again, it's not unusual to have a wind assist on the outbound leg and the headwind on the way back. Just be ready for that. Maybe pay attention to what the weather forecast is looking like. And your pace and everything will be affected by all the weather conditions on race day. And target an RPE of 6 to 8 on a scale of 10, really, is what would be ideal. And then pedal consistent and steady. It's going to be a good day. It's going to be a good ride. There's been a lot of changes very, very recently here to penalties. I'll talk about the most common ones. Drafting, littering, and blocking are the most common penalties. IRONMAN has made very recent changes that take into effect actually in the month of March this month. There's a 2-minute penalty for 70.3s for drafting now, 3-minute penalty for a full distance. From a drafting standpoint, you are required to still keep 6 bike lengths between you and the bike in front of you. Always make sure you pass on the left and complete that pass within 25 seconds. And then when you are passed, make sure you make an immediate and constant rear progress to back off and get out of that drafting zone. Always make sure if you're discarding anything off the bike, do it in the littering zone or do it in the trash zones and in the transition areas. Blocking, make sure you ride to the left. Always ride to the left. I'm sorry, ride to the right, pass to the left. And it's a 30-second penalty now for a 70.3. IRONMAN made some of the changes that have been made have to do with hydration, how much you can carry in the cockpit area of your bike, the volume you can carry. So there's very recent changes. So make sure you pay attention at ironman.com. They have those details out there. If you drop me an email, I can send you the link to some of those changes as well, so you can review those. The athlete guide should be updated with all the latest and greatest. So when the athlete guide is published, make sure you read that real carefully and you don't run into any issues with how you are carrying hydration on your bike. Obviously, chin strap must be fastened whenever you're on your bike. Make sure you do not forget that. You're not allowed to have your cell phone out there or anything like that, and using it in a distracted manner, so you can't be texting or taking pictures. No outside assistance other than from race volunteers and personnel. And then you can unzip your top, but you should zip it up prior to the finish line. Females are allowed to wear sports bras, but if you do have your tri kit unzipped, it's got to be connected at the bottom at all times and over your shoulders. But But anyway, as I said, if you do want me to send you any of the links or a link to the latest and greatest changes from IRONMAN on some of these rules, I'll be happy to do that. Just drop me a line, and I'll have my contact information at the end here. All right, so then once you finish the bike, you are on to the run. This is a great run course. It's very flat. There is terrific crowd support. It's a 3-loop course, so lots of opportunity for your friends and family to see you out there. There's, as I said, 3 loops and plenty of turns, lots of turns, but there's lots, everything's really well marked, so you don't have to worry about memorizing the course. You want to manage your pacing carefully and don't surge or push too hard on those turns, because some of the turns are kind of sharp, so there'll be some fluctuations in your pace as you navigate the course. And this is a good one to mentally break it into 3 runs, because each loop is just a little over 4 miles each, and the loops can go quick, and you get plenty of crowd support, as I mentioned, so they can go fast. So just break it into three runs individually. Next thing you know, you've done 2 loops, you're on your 3rd loop, and you're ready to go. It is a sunny course. There's very little shade out there, and it can be warm. So don't skip hydration. Focus on staying cool, dumping water on your head if it's a warm day. Everything you can to control your temperature if it's a warm one. Just some brief images. You can see the paddle wheel boat here again, the Moody Gardens. You run all through there, which is kind of fun, and very, very flat. Gain's only 56 feet, so it's a very fair course, can be very quick. Similar fueling considerations here as we talked about on the bike. You'll have 8 stations about every mile. You'll have water and mortal hydration out there, no Gatorade products, so be aware of that. There'll be cola and bars, I think, and chips and pretzels, bananas, those types of things. The different types of Morton gels that we've already talked about. This is an important one. Usually they have ice out there and sponges or rags that are cold and wet. So if it's a real warm and humid day, definitely take advantage of that. Put it on the back of your neck, on top of your head. Keep yourself as cool as possible. A lot of people do carry their own hydration. That's fine if that's what you choose to do. And then again, check the final athlete guide for on-course nutrition details in case there are any changes from what's been done in the past. Run pacing, ideally, from a heart rate standpoint, you can be 5 to 10 beats over what you averaged on the bike. If you run with power, try to stay as even as you can. It's a very flat course, as I mentioned. And don't overdo it in the first mile. You'll be excited to get off the bike, and there'll be a lot of people cheering and screaming for you as you exit transition 2 and start the run. A lot of people, so just keep things in check. In this course, steady pace is best, but you will have pace variability because there are a lot of turns out there. Just don't do the surges that I mentioned. Just keep your pace in control. When you make one of those sharper turns, just ease back into your pace. Don't surge. And then, ideally an RPE of 6 to 8 or so on a scale of 10 will work out well for you on this run course. From a mental fitness standpoint for the race overall, focusing on goals as the #1 priority, which are things you have control over, your attitude, your fueling plan, and managing your effort. And then focusing on targets like power, pace, heart rate targets, as you and your coach have decided. And then stick to your plan, including how you react when something doesn't go according to plan. Things don't quite go the way you anticipate or the way you want. Your attitude and mind game will come into play there and help you have a good day still. And then outcomes, if any, should be left to the second half of the run. Outcomes being a finish placement, a time goal, getting a world championship slot, or whatever. If at all, don't give those a thought until the second half of the run. Just do your thing, run your race, and don't worry about anyone else and what they're doing. If people are passing you, let them pass. Just let them do their thing and just you do yours. And then when you're out there, show appreciation for the supporters and volunteers and all the family and friends that made the trip to be there to watch you, and just really enjoy the day. It's going to be a great one. There are some time cutoffs to keep in mind. You have 8.5 hours to complete the entire course. You get 1 hour and 10 minutes to complete the swim. You get 5 hours and 30 minutes total to complete the bike, including T1. There's an intermediate cutoff of 12:40 p.m. at aid station number 3 on the bike, which is at about just before mile 42. And then you have 8 hours and 30 minutes to complete the entire course. And there's an intermediate cutoff at 3:50 p.m., which is at mile 9, which is just past the start of the 3rd lap. And double check the final athlete guide for those cutoff times just to make sure there have not been any changes, but that's what's been in the past. And just make sure you review those and are familiar with that. For spectators on the race day, hopefully you've got people down there helping you out, but if not, if people are cheering you on from home, the Ironman athlete tracking app is available. There's also some various spots along the course where people can watch you. Along the swim, ideally, it's the swim exit is the best spot. There's no way for spectators to be along the Palm Beach path where all the athletes line up and where the volunteers are with the signs, where you kind of stage yourself in the corrals. There's really spectators are not allowed in that area, and they're not allowed along the pier or anything like that. So it's kind of a long view to see you jump in the water. So the best spot's really on the exit. On the bike, the best spot there is initially out of transition, and then when you come back into town and come back into transition, there are various parts along the course if you get out on the highway, but the traffic, of course, out there can be tricky with lane closures and things can get congested with cars. So it's a little bit iffy if people want to leave the Moody Gardens area and try to do that, but they can. And then on the run is really the key thing. Almost anywhere along the run course is fair game for spectators. Very great spot is between the visitor center and the Oleander Bowl grassy area, because the athletes loop through there 3 times. So it's a really great run course for spectators. You'll see a lot of people. And I checked to see if there'll be a QT2 tent, which I think there will be. So there will be people there cheering for you from there. So that'll be great. Post-race, once you're all done, there'll be bike and gear checkout from 2 to 6 o'clock. You have to have your athlete wristband to get your bike and gear out of there, or someone that's traveling with you with your bike checkout ticket. And if you can, come back and cheer for people. It's always fun. The slot allocation and awards will be at 4 o'clock at the Moody Gardens Hotel parking lot in the back there, same place where Athlete Village and everything is. And the slot allocation and roll down for World Championships will be immediately following the awards. And of course, you have to be present to claim your spot, and of course, make your payment right away. So hopefully some of you will have a chance to do that. If you have any questions, make note of my email, bob@QT2systems.com. I'd be happy to connect with you, have a conversation on the phone, whatever. If you want me to send you any of the latest and greatest on the Ironman rule changes, I'll be happy to send you links to that. Just shoot me an email and we can get together and have a talk. My Instagram coach page is there as well if you want to give me a follow or reach out to me that way. And also you can follow QT2 Systems if you're not on all the social media channels. I have a lot of good content, publishing things very frequently. So give us a follow if you're not. Galveston is an awesome event. It's a great town. I hope this information, of course, was helpful for you, and I hope you all have an excellent day. But if you need anything, if you have any questions, reach out to me directly. Thanks very much.